Okay, so let's take a look at some of the common patterns we find per category. So for example, shape, position, number, color, size, and angles. Now just another tip, every single time you get a pattern wrong, which no doubt you will throughout the early stages of revising abstract reasoning, but every time you do, you want to be writing the pattern down. And not just writing it down for the sake of it, you want to also organize all the patterns that you get wrong in terms of their categories. So shape, position, number, color, size, and angles. Or if you are using a mnemonic, then stick with a mnemonic and organize it according to that. And whenever you do extra abstract reasoning revision, you go back to the list, add it in, and then keep on doing this. Now, every time you review that list, it honestly will help you a lot in terms of identifying certain harder patterns. And as a result, it will help you boost up your score. Now, it's the same principle with A-levels and GCSEs. Every time you do a past paper and you get a question wrong, you look at the mark scheme, you look at the examiner's report, you analyze the answer, you think, why did you get this wrong? You write down the answer on a separate piece of paper and you revise it once again, or you revise that one topic again. Now, the same thing here, you would want to review all the answers that you got wrong, and by reviewing them again, just by even simply just reading it, helps a lot. So you really do want to, go over the patterns that you got wrong, and this helped me so much second time round I did the UCAT. Now here are just a few examples of some of the patterns I faced during my abstract reasoning revision, and these were some of the patterns I wrote down. We've got symmetrical versus asymmetrical, we've got curved versus straight shapes. So set A has all curved shapes, set B has all straight shapes. We've got right angle versus obtuse, so all set A have right angles, all set B have obtuse angles. We've got y-sided shape versus x-sided shape, so let's say set A had 10-sided shapes and set B had 7-sided shapes, so shapes with 7 sides. And these were just some of the patterns. Now, some of them may not make sense, so you might pause the video now and have a quick read, but some of them may not make as much sense. Now, the reason being for that is because you actually need to see the pattern, the diagram, in order to understand it. Which is why I really urge you, rather than just simply copying down this list here, you actually create your own list with your own experience, and that way it will properly benefit you. So these were just some of the examples for shape. Then we have position, so rotation. So we've got rotating a certain amount of degrees, whether that's 180 degrees, 90 degrees, or 45 degrees. Then we've got rotating clockwise or anti-clockwise. So you may be familiar with the sequences question, so where there is a certain diagram in each one, and you have to work out the next set or shape in the sequence. You may be familiar with the sequences question, where there is a sequence of different patterns and you have to work out the next pattern in the sequence. So we also have arrows and lightning bolts. Now, arrows usually point in something or point in a certain direction. Lightning bolts can also do the same as well. So I've seen a pattern where lightning bolts are pointing at a certain direction. Then we also have a common pattern, which is clocks. So you might find a pattern filled with clocks. Now, sometimes you might find the hands move a certain amount of spaces. For example, the hour hand moves 3 spaces and the minute hand moves 2 spaces. So this is once again to do with the sequences question. So you have to work out the next pattern in the sequence. Once again, I've put here arrow equals direction, and quite often arrows are used to indicate some sort of direction. So these are just some of the patterns I found throughout abstract reasoning, and once again, it's a really good idea for you to create your own list. Rather than looking at these, create your own personal list, and that way it will actually impact your abstract reasoning score every single time you review your patterns that you get wrong. So these are just some of the list of patterns I found for number. Now, number is very, very common, and it's probably the first pattern everyone is drawn towards. So counting the number of sides on each shape, or sometimes counting the number of lines of symmetry, or sometimes counting the number of colored objects, whether that's black or white, so probably let's say 6 circles in one set and 2 white circles in a set, something like that. So number is very, very common throughout abstract reasoning. So these are just some of the patterns. You can pause the video and have a look, and if you do have any questions in regards to any of these patterns, comment them down below and I will attempt to answer them. Once again, we've got color. So you've got color alternation, so you might have, once again in a sequence question, you might have the circle alternating color, so it goes from black to white to black. So that one is relatively distinct, and simultaneously they might put in another shape which is rotating around the circle. So something like that. Now each box has a particular shape colored in, or each box has a certain number of colors. So these are just some of the common patterns in regards to color. So size is relatively common and relatively distinct as well. So you'll be able to identify very, very quickly that all of set A have small shapes and all of set B have very, very large shapes. Or it could be that there might be 2 small shapes in set A and 1 large shape. Could be something like that, and the rest are distractors. Okay, so just another technique in regards to size. Now let's say you are spending a little bit too much time in trying to identify a pattern. So what I'd suggest doing is take a step back, have a look, is there any common shape within each of the boxes within set A? Let's say, for example, circle was in throughout all the boxes in set A. So take a look at the circle, identify all the features. Once you have identified all the features, then go into the next box in set A, see if it's similar to the previous box. If it is, then move on. And then sooner or later you'll identify a pattern. So you really kind of want to look out for what hasn't changed, and what hasn't changed throughout all of the boxes is very, very likely to be a pattern. Then we've got angles, so we've got acute versus obtuse angles. Then we've got 90-degree angles, so always look out for right angled triangles. And then we've also got black shapes have obtuse angles and white shapes have acute angles. So these were just some other common patterns I found in regards to angles.